So I just finished reading the article, and I also just finished watching the video from Disc Golf World twice. And the theme that continues to get repeated over and over and over again in these discussions is that white people love talking about people of color, underprivileged communities, and anything dealing with race and racism. They love speaking about that discussion without us actually being there. Overly sensitive, woke white people want to speak for us. These are all psychological responses to something that has been ingrained within a certain demographic of people for hundreds of years. And as a narcissist would do to avoid accountability and responsibility in this discussion, they do whatever they can to avoid getting directly to the source. So they'll include ad hominem attacks, they'll glorify on one side, they'll downplay on the other side, and at the end of the day, they get to say, well, we have the best intentions. Some of us are good, some of us are bad, but the good outweighs the bad, and let's just move on, as he actually said in the video. Move on. And I read the article. I looked at what they were talking about in the video, but when you actually read the article and you know how these programs work, you would understand that the take that Disc Golf World took on this article is just as off base as the people who wrote the article, how they see them and how their take was on disc golf. And that's the problem. That's the problem with controlling a narrative to avoid the accountability and the responsibility of actually interacting, communicating with the people that you're talking about. They talk so much about the Paul Macbeth Foundation going around the world and doing all this shit. But have you ever heard the people from the communities, intellectuals, who break down these systems and how they work in the communities? No, you haven't. In fact, you don't even have the attention span or the care to humble yourself, read the whole article, and investigate which parts of that article are realistic. Some of the things that I saw were, for one thing, this park in New York is only on a 12-month pilot program. So regardless of the fact that it got approved by the city, it's only in its approval process right now to see. And who are they communicating with? Who's actually seeing? The people who are in that community. So to take the position that Disc Golf World took, the arrogance, the shutting, the dismissiveness, when in fact, this is part of the approval process. For one thing, it proves the point of the people who wrote the article. Secondly, it shows that the hierarchy that was mentioned in the article is a reality, because the high horse that they're standing on with the tone, with the approach of that video, is completely dismissive of the actual community while it's in its approval process. But since they have the authority to decide what is right and what is wrong, the parts of the article that relate directly to us and our communities are irrelevant. They're not even worth addressing. In fact, they should just be dismissed completely. When in reality, the parts of that article that were dismissed are actually the most important when you're talking about the approval process. There's a reason why it's in an approval process. And this is the reason why. Because if it presents a problem, then it needs to be readdressed. But when it comes to so-called white people and something that they love, there are no other perspectives. It's either their way or the highway. And if you're in their way, you better get out of the way. I had my own encounter with this in a county park in Lodi. I'm in California. This is a closed off county park. You have to pay to get in there. And there happens to be a disc golf course in this park. It's designed enough to where the majority of the holes are out of the way of the majority of the people in the park. But there are some areas where there's overlap. And as a regular player there, you know, okay, if there's going to be people over here, you want to play away from them. Stay away from that side because there's, in most cases, 2 tee pads and in many of the holes, 2 baskets. So in this case, it's very easy to play away. And if there is no way to play around, then you move and you go around them. But there is this hierarchy that was dismissed in the Disc Golf World video that exists. This is the tone that I have seen with many other people. And to dismiss the racist parts that are involved in the interactions is also part of the problem. It's part of the problem overall, but it's also part of the problem when I was talking about earlier about the people who run these sports, these community events where some stuff like this happens, don't really give an actual effort to understanding our perspective. They don't care. They'd rather just dismiss you. Oh, it's not racist. You know how many people are playing disc golf? How many poor people are playing disc golf? How many people of color are playing disc golf? That's no different than when you bring up a discussion and they say, well, I have so many black friends. My best friend is black. My girlfriend's black. They're not really listening to you. They don't want to listen to you. They only want to shut you down and be the good guy, defend themselves. And in their defending themselves, what are they doing to you? Demonizing you. This is what they're doing by addressing this article from this angle, especially when they don't actually speak with you or get your side of the story. And in this discussion, our side of the story doesn't even exist. You have so-called woke white people writing articles on behalf of our perspective in our community, and you have disgruntled so-called white people in the disc golf community talking about how what they're doing is inclusive and not a threat and everything else. And this is a trend. This is how things go. We are constantly hearing white people speak for us and about us without us actually being in the discussion. That is the same problem that exists in so many other situations in this world. It's a mechanism of control. This is what the mainstream media is. This is what your education system is. It's a means to control the narrative. If they control the narrative, they can control how you see what's being discussed and how you feel about the people who are discussing this information. So you feel good. You take their side. They're nice. They're inclusive. They're doing things. And on the other hand, they're defending us. They're talking about the community. But what always gets missed is the fact that the narrative is being consciously controlled without our voice being in this discussion. So in reference to the article specifically, yes, they were wrong for not doing any research about the sport. But that is the smallest and most irrelevant part of that whole article. And the meat and potatoes of that article were completely avoided 9 times out of 10 because people don't know what to do with that information. And I say people, I mean so-called white people. So they resort to, like I said, laughing, dismissing, attacking, ad hominem attack, whatever it is. And that is the main thing that we, in our community, in our lives, that's the biggest part of this discussion. So we never hear that. We never see that. And if we bring it up, we're attacked. Look at the comment section on the videos on this channel. You want to see how the disc golf community really feels about underprivileged people talking about underprivileged talking points? Look at the comment section. on these videos, and you'll see what we're actually dealing with. See, this is the other group. You have the cool, hip bro group that the article was mentioning. Then you have the woke group who wrote the article. But you also have that way out of line, completely, that old deep racism that still exists, that so-called white people want to act like doesn't exist anymore. And it's easy for them to act like it doesn't exist anymore because the TV and the radio doesn't say it exists anymore. Back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, all that, they didn't give a shit. It was on TV. You could see it. But the TV now told them, oh, that's over. But is it? Where did it go? We still see it. So you can't dismiss the fact that race is involved in these interactions. This man walked up to a group of women in their full Muslim gear, sitting on the grass, peacefully eating their food together as a family. One of these ladies was pushing 80, and this man walked up to them for the second time. Look at that. I'm just telling them to move their car over there. They're on the course. They didn't even bother just going up to them and just being cool about it. Yelling, you have to move. You're on a disc golf course. You need to get out of the way. With that tone, even worse, you can listen to it for yourself. Hey, don't talk to them like that. Thank you so much. Don't talk to them. Be a little bit more respectful. Hey, hold on. This is a park dedicated to both disc golf and everybody else. If you would like them to move, then come up to them and speak to them and ask them in a way that isn't like, move. What kind of respect is that? Is that not understood? They're perfectly okay where they are. You can throw to that basket just as I did. And with that tee pad, you could also throw from that tee pad to the next one. So they don't have to move their car. They don't have to move where they're sitting. You can play around them. And you don't have to be disrespectful to them.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Okay, I heard you saying.
Okay, so have a nice day then. How about that?
Thank you so much, brother. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't move. Yeah, please. You're okay.
Thank you so much. It's okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm gonna move it.
No, you don't have to move. You can stay right here. If they're coming around, just be aware that it's going on.
But
And
you know what? It means a lot to me.
yeah,
It
okay.
means a lot to me to talk to them.
You're very welcome. Enjoy, please. Sorry about that too. So they were yelling at them to move their car before they got up to them to yell at them to move their picnic. And this kind of shit is way out of line on every level. But this is that atmosphere that's created, which this article mentions it as a hierarchy. It exists. What they're talking about is white privilege, white supremacy, the blatant disrespect, the yelling, the lack of self-awareness. To be yelling at elders about disc golf, and many of the times cowardly. The individual in this park was staying at a distance. Once I started walking up to them to defend them, he stopped moving towards them because he was no longer just dealing with 3 or 4 women in a picnic. He had my big ass standing there looking at him like, okay, now what do you have to say? And when you address them, they don't have anything to say. If this was 4 old white women, they would not have taken that tone as they did with 4 Muslim women. No way in hell. 4 white men having a picnic? No way in hell. They would have said, you need to get up and move. No. This is where race does come in this discussion. And that discussion needs to be had because there is a hierarchy in the mentality of people who are recovering from hundreds of years of white supremacy. And because you're uncomfortable with talking about it, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Paul Macbeth can put 1 billion disc golf courses around the world in all these different places. It ain't gonna fucking matter if you gonna always be dealing with white people and white people shit. This article being written is some white people shit. The response to the article is some white people shit. And we are in this discussion in many different angles, yet you never see us represented in the actual discussion. They don't care. Your voice is irrelevant. Why? Because they can speak for you. There's another hierarchy there. Just hush up. You don't have to say anything. We got this. We'll speak for you. We got street cred. We traveled around in a minivan to all these disc golf courses. Did you come speak to us? Did you ask anybody? Did you research anything about gentrification before dismissing the whole thing? This is another valid point in reference to that article. I'm not saying I agree with that whole article. That shit was all over the place. What I am saying is that parts of that article are very important, not just in the disc golf community, but in every community, especially in this country. And where is the PDGA response to this? Where's the Paul Macbeth Foundation response to this? The meat and potatoes of this discussion. You won't see it. You'll see the discussion be made about everything else around it, because that's a way to downplay it. Because ultimately, they don't give a fuck about you. They only give a fuck about protecting their sport. So they'll throw Paul Macbeth out there and say, look what he's doing. Look what our kind of brown friend in the disc golf community is doing with our sport around the world. See? We care about your people and your underprivileged shit. We know you're in the park, but now we're in the park. The city gave us the authority, so you need to get the fuck out of the way. You're in our way now. This is the tone that's being set. And this is the main part of that discussion that largely they're not going to address because they don't have the capacity. They don't have the awareness, the experience to come at that discussion from a logical, a rational, an honest perspective. So it's just, let's dismiss this. Let's laugh about this and let's just move on. Hey, what's going on in Australia? Thomas Gilbert, let us know. The very fact that they just talk about gentrification as a side note to a discussion tells you everything that you need to know about how they see you and what you're dealing with. The majority of these interactions got the white savior program written all over them. Woke white writers eat that white savior cereal for breakfast. They can't wait to get engaged with that. White people wanting to grow the sport, traveling to Africa, Mexico, South America. It's the very definition of virtue signaling. It's confirmed, it's solidified when they do all of this shit without a genuine outreach or discussion with the people that they're supposedly doing this for. It's all about how they look. It's all about how you see them, how the world sees them. And just like in politics, our people are used to push a political agenda, to influence political parties. That hierarchy mentality is real. That bro culture is real. You can't dismiss it. You can't laugh it away. You can't fluff it away as if it's nothing. We see it. We deal with that shit every day we're out in the park. But since it hits directly in your soft spot, they're not really interested in hearing the truth about that discussion. So they'll just say, oh, race is not involved. I don't want to hear all this stuff about tyrannical colonizers and all this. Did you ask any of us if we agree with the article at all, or parts of the article, or how we see disc golf being involved with gentrification, or what gentrification is? How many people that watch Disc Golf World even know what gentrification means? And you've taken a learning opportunity and just laughed it away, scoffed. Oh, it's not what it is. But just as much as they didn't do any research about disc golf, you didn't do shit research about gentrification or what parts of that article were relevant and meaningful, which is worse than the people who wrote the damn article. Because you're just perpetuating this same approach to all of these actions, all of these discussions, all of these decisions that are being made on our behalf, in our world, in our communities, and about our experiences without us being there once again. And just move on to the next story. Because you can do that. You can just move on to the next story. We can't. We just have to just sit here and just listen to this shit and deal with it. We got to deal with people going up to a group of women, yelling at them to get the fuck off their disc golf course. This hierarchy shit is real. And it's a real fucking problem. And it's not the problem of what happens on the disc golf course. This is a cancer. The actual events that happen in real life, like whatever kind of interactions happen in New York, but the interactions that are happening here in California that I just shared proof of, that shit is real. And the bigger part of that is not what's happening on the course. It's what leads up to those individuals feeling that they can treat people that way. Where did they get that audacity? Where the fuck did they get that lack of respect? That was bonus. That was turbo shit. That was beyond just regular lack of respect. That was beyond disc golf. What was it? Oh, it wasn't race? You don't fucking know. And in many cases, you don't want to know. We don't have that option. We got to deal with this shit every fucking day. This discussion will be had. Like I mentioned in a previous video, this same type of discussion was brought up on OTB's website. And what did they do? They just deleted the whole thread and replaced it with comments that were in favor of the disc that I commented on. They deleted my comment in response to the art that was used on a particular disc, an infinite disc. They didn't like it. They deleted it, and immediately after that, the only two comments that were on there were talking about how great that artwork is and how this is some of the best artwork there is. So this is not an isolated incident. This shit is everywhere. It only seems isolated because, for one, like I said, there is no outreach. There is no genuine concern or perspective given. It's mostly deflection and dismissal. So no, I'm not defending the people who wrote this article. I don't know them. I don't like the way it was written. But I do not disagree with some of the points that were made in that article. They were very relevant and worth discussing, not worth dismissing or deflecting from, which is what the majority of people are going to do. This is not something that's going to go away. This is only going to get worse, especially if white people keep deflecting from these discussions, the depth of these discussions. Like ball golf, like the country clubs, the disc golf community has been living in this happy-go-lucky fairy tale world, very self-contained echo chamber environment where nothing is ever wrong, everybody's just great friends, and everything is okay. When this sport truly starts to grow, these interactions and these discussions will not be avoidable. They will not be dismissible. You will have to address this in real time. So I highly recommend that you address this now, as early as possible. And you better find out which side you're on. If you are on any side other than truth, justice, accountability, and respect, you will be held accountable. You will not be able to laugh it away. You will be outnumbered. At some point in the future, you will be outnumbered, and you will not have the opportunity. You will not have the ability to take this kind of arrogant approach in these discussions. In fact, people will look back at these videos, at these perspectives, as we look back at the videos and the perspectives of the people in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. It might not seem like that right now, but this is the same discussion. And I am so looking forward to that day because I and we are tired of having to bite our tongues and sit back and deal with this shit just because we don't want to ruffle a few feathers or the status quo is not in our favor. time for that shit is running out quick. And if this is the approach that you want to take on these discussions, it's going to be a bumpy road ahead.